In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emmanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. I hope that you're having a good day and that you're involved in something that you're enjoying. Today, we are going to dig into the evolving state of AI. We're also going to dig into music and AI and how musicians and music lovers can ethically create music and continue to enjoy entertaining people with good AI music. My guest today is Jason Michael Perry. He's the founder and chief AI officer of Perry Labs and the author of The AI Evolution. With over 20 years of experience in technology, he specializes in AI strategy, intelligent systems, and innovation. Not only does he write a weekly newsletter, thoughts on tech and things, but he also serves on the board of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra and is an entrepreneur in residence at the University of Baltimore. Jason led the award-winning project AI in A minor, which is a nice play on words, merging classical music with AI-composed performances in collaboration with AWS and the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. Let's dive in and get Jason's insight on the state of AI and where it may be evolving.
Hey, Emmanuel, thanks for having me on the show. How are you doing?
Absolutely, man. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you and see what you're getting into these days.
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, talk to me a little bit about some of the factors that you're seeing in organizations and either their initial implementations or what they're finding out once they get some AI in place and what's going on actually, on the ground, boots on the ground.
Yeah, when we come into a lot of organizations, we're finding that businesses have started with some form of proof of concept or dabbled with AI, but they're not actually seeing the returns that they expected to get from whatever implementations they've done. It's hard. I mean, this is not a magic solution that you just sprinkle AI pixie dust on something and it just works.
Right.
You still need to master your data and take these systems and connect them into AI to get the true benefits from them. So what we spend a lot of time doing is educating executives, especially executives, on what some of these words mean. What is agentic AI? What are AI workflows, and what are the ways that these things can come together to help you see benefit? One of our initial consultation projects is to sit down and understand your organization and just give a blueprint just to show the possibilities and then make sure that you understand the language of how these things will actually impact to reduce costs. And once you start seeing it that way, it's a huge difference. But this doesn't mean, roll out a chatbot and the world is amazing. That's the worst thing you can do. The companies are like, hey, we got site licenses for ChatGPT or for Gemini or some AI tool. We wrote it out to the organization with no education, no training, no connection to our data, and
No
the adoption
governance.
rate is low. No governance. It's like, I don't understand why no one wants to use the thing. Well, this is why, Or what we see on the other side, which is I think even worse, are companies who come in and said, oh my goodness, AI is very frightening. And because it's so frightening, we're going to just lock it down in our organization. We're not going to let anyone use it. We're going to block it on all of our networks so no one can use it. And then those companies have shadow IT, which means that people are using the tools, just not telling them, lying about it, and then taking all of your personal data and your corporate confidential data and feeding it to AI models with no education and no governance. So, to answer your question, you got to make a plan. You have to accept the fact that it is happening, if you like it or not. And if you want to take this and turn it into something that's going to be beneficial for your organization, you have to lead with education, good governance, and make a plan that's not just saying, hey, we spent money and bought the tool. Now go out and do something with it.
Yeah, I think that's what's fascinating, right? Is that it's like everybody lost their minds and forgot that this is a technology that we've done these technological improvements before, right? It's not new. We have to have a strategic plan. We have to have a team that's going to be kind of our lead team to take in the technology. We need governance. And then we need to have a process by which it gets adopted in a way that makes sense for the business. Why did we forget all that, Jason?
So I wrote a book on this, a book called The AI Evolution. It's the role of the chief AI officer. And
Nice.
in the intro chapter, one of the things that I point out, or 2 points. One is that all of the big tech companies by valuation didn't exist 51 years ago, which is crazy to think about. Microsoft just had its 50th anniversary this year. And so Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, Nvidia, all those companies are less than 51 years old. And when you talk about Google and Nvidia and Amazon, they're a lot younger than you realize.
Sure.
But each of those companies is connected into one of the big three waves of technology evolution: personal computers, desktop publishing, in some ways, and then we have the internet, and then of course you have mobilefication, application, and all of them are saying that AI is going to be bigger. But when you go back and you look at the C-suite roles that have been created from all the companies that are out there to deal with these technology innovations, this is the reason why we have CIOs. It's not a role that existed 51 years ago.
Sure.
This is the reason why we have chief information and security officers and chief data officers. And so all of these roles are directly tied to all of the things that are happening, and so or that have happened. And now we're in this new place where someone needs to take the mantle and answer the questions of how do you get companies to figure out governance and figure out these rules, but to make sure that you're not going to end up like Sears going against Amazon.
Well, explain to me a little bit about how the chief AI officer is going to be different than the CIO or chief technology officer or information officer. What's the differential there?
It's a great question. So I like to first of all bucket the two roles, CIO and CTO. And I think of CTOs as organizations who tend to build versus buy, and CIOs tend to be in organizations where you tend to buy versus build. That's not to say that you can have organization with both, but one tends to implement IT solutions where the other one tends to focus on building technology solutions. Tech and software are incredibly important as part of AI, but that is a small piece of it. AI is about data and data science, engineering.
Yep.
AI is a lot around change management, as
Yep.
well as around in addition to change management, it's also about understanding your SOPs, your standard operating procedures. And
Right.
so, if you're taking someone who's technical and you're expecting them to look at all of your operational efficiencies, it's not to say that they can't do that. It's just not
Yeah.
necessarily the specific thing that that person is used to doing.
And
so
they
this
already have
role
a
is
full-time job, right? I mean, they already have a full plate.
Yes. Mhm. The incredible thing that I'm seeing at some of the biggest organizations is that no one has the ball. You have a CTO, you have a CIO. I'm saying like a large Fortune 500 or bigger. You have a CIO, you have a CTO. You maybe have a chief information and security officer. You maybe have a chief digital officer, and then you maybe have a chief data officer. And this impacts all of those roles. And
Right.
so, even if those roles are the director positions that come up in different parts of the organization, how are you going to carry this ball? And so, what I'm seeing in smaller organizations is that they don't necessarily have, they haven't figured out how to navigate, but bigger organizations are just bumping into themselves because no one's been given the authority to understand and cut through all these things. And suddenly you have these AI consortiums of 5, 6, 7 executives that have to come together and agree on an approach.
Yeah, right. Agreed.
Yes. And it's all locking down and everybody wants that role. And so, so some of the importance of this is just saying, this is the person who's going to have the football or whatever you want to say, and it's going to be the one who's required to pull this down and make this happen. It's a hat. So that hat could be on a director, it could be on a VP, and it could be on any of your C-suite staff. But it's important to define what those requirements are, what that person needs to do in that job description, and then say who you're going to assign that responsibility to.
I love it. I think those are great distinctions, and I agree that the smaller organizations really just have a gap. They probably don't have a CTO. They don't, they maybe have some outside consulting, and then the bigger organizations just want to have turf wars.
Yep.
Well, that's interesting. I really want to. I'm a musician myself. I really want to hear about your foray into AI in A minor, and tell me a little bit about what that looked like, and how you put that together and how it was received.
But first, I have to ask, what do you play? What instruments? I
I
saw the
play the
guitar in the
guitar and I
background.
sing. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I had lunch with the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, and this was in 2022, 2023, and we just started asking this question of what's possible with AI in music, which led us to want to run this experiment. And this is before tools like Suno AI were out there, or some of these AI music generation tools. But we went and we brought a bunch of different things together, and we used it to compose original music in the style of Philip Glass and Mozart. And it's important to understand that classical music is very different than modern music, which has more of like I would say, an algorithmic like structure to it. There's the
Mhm.
hook, and it kind of moves in a different way. Whereas classical music, is more like a story that kind of transitions, and it's very different. And so one of the first things that we discovered is that so many music models are trained on so much modern music that it's incredibly difficult for them to understand and create classical music because
I
they
love
try
it.
and convert it into something
Yeah.
that's different.
Yeah.
And so, with a lot of trial and error, we were able to create something that I think was amazing and unique. And we brought on the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra, some just amazing musicians, a brass quintet and a string quartet, and they played original pieces by both Mozart and Philip Glass, and then they played our AI composed music that we composed and then turned into sheet music that they
Oh,
played
nice.
on
Uh-huh.
stage. And then afterwards, we did a panel conversation where we had an opportunity to talk to the musicians who played this music,
Love it.
and it was so interesting to hear their feelings about it. And one of the things is that it's like specifically talking about Mozart, or like the buildup that happens in Philip Glass's music, is
Yeah.
that it was obvious that it was mimicking but not understanding. And I think
Isn't
that's
that
the same thing that
amazing?
you hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
what you hear about art, about from writers. It's like it's
Sure.
mimicking me, but it doesn't understand me. And
Yep.
and it got into this question of like the soul behind the music. Like, what does it really mean? It's like this was something that did sound like Mozart, but it wasn't Mozart. There was something that just didn't feel like it connected. And for
Yeah.
these folks who played music, for a very long time, it was just for them. It was like there was something that was missing.
Uh-huh.
And I still find it was just an amazing experience to go through, and I would love to do something like that again.
I would love. Did you do some surveys with the people listening also? I mean, was there a corollary to the listeners about that and the feeling?
We took questions.
Yeah.
We took questions from people who were in the audience. There was like 500 plus people who attended this event, and the line was so long that we could only make it through like 5 or 6 questions because everyone had
Right.
had thoughts. But talking to people that I mean, again, this was early on in the AI days. This is when we're still talking about AI getting fingers right, on images,
Yeah. Right.
things have changed. And what you can do now is a lot better than what it was then. I always say this is the
Sure.
worst AI you're ever going to use. But
Right.
at the time, for what it was then, um, it was one of those things where it was that uncanny valley. I think for the people who are listening, there was something that felt off, but
Uh-huh.
they couldn't quite put their finger on what it was or why it didn't feel right.
Interesting.
Um, mhm.
Yeah. So it is interesting that even on an emotional level through music, we can get that gap like you're talking about in writing or in video or even the visuals that we see, right? We're not seeing
Yeah.
six fingers anymore, but you can still see slightly things are out of sequence for what the human brain can do.
What one of the first problems that we ran into when we were composing music was that the music created by AI in some cases that it would play for us was unplayable in some cases by
Oh
humans.
yeah.
Just like
Right.
the notes it would go up to and then come down, and like it
Right.
would do things that like you could do with a computer, but like a human trying to be like, wait, you want me to do what?
Right.
Like that just doesn't happen. And so
Yeah.
you kind of like, and I think those are the things that you don't necessarily know, but you understand and expect certain things that are possible, especially if you have a music a ear for music, and
Yep.
there's these things that are like, well, that's just there's something weird about that.
Yeah.
Um,
But like you're saying, over the course of, let's say you were to do one performance like that a year for the next 5 years, by year six, 90% of that would be ironed out, I would imagine. Don't you think?
I think so. I have a weird view here. Whenever someone asks me about like my thoughts on AI generated music, I look at Justin Bieber, which I'm sure is not where you thought I was going to go, but but Justin Bieber I think is a perfect example of a YouTube generation where
Yep.
music can be created and distributed without needing the cost of studios and and gold press CDs or LPs or it was a point where there was a huge transition and now we're at streaming and I think that this is another point where it's easier than ever to take your screenplay and potentially turn it into something that's interesting or to record music and create something without necessarily having a full band to play behind you. And
Yep.
there are positives and negatives that come from that. It's I like to say AI is the great equalizer. But what I am interested to see is in a world where anyone can create music from a prompt, there's something that's going to be unique that stands out. There's something that you're still going to find that is interesting. And one of the things that I hear from a lot of like my kids and Gen Z folks is that there's more of a want to see something that's more authentic, to go to concerts, to go to
Right.
shows,
Be around
to
people.
feel like
Yeah.
it's possible. Yes, because it's like, it's all AI. I need to go and see a play. I need to
Thank
go see
God.
something where I can tell that it's human. And so
Yeah.
I wonder if this creates, an interesting like resurgence of things that where old is new again in a way that only could happen because, or maybe not only, but is happening because it's fueled by AI.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And my hope for humanity is that we use this magic kernel that we have in order to gain some time back and have time for this second experience, the second renaissance, where we have time to play and write music and write poetry and paint and tell stories again the way that they did a few hundred years ago.
We can hope. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see.
Time will tell.
Well, yeah. So, tell me about what you think the current adoption rate is. Like, how much market penetration has AI gotten in your view for U.S. business?
I there is a lot of reports that I've read out there that say that the actual use of AI is somewhere around 20 to 26%.
Uh-huh.
I think it's 26% is a more specific number from a recent survey. I don't believe that. I think that there's a lot of folks who are denying their AI use or who are not actually like self-reporting.
Yep.
One of the things that I hear often is, like I've heard people who say, I don't use AI, but then you probe a little bit. It's like, well, I use AI for the first draft and then I wrote the document. You
Right.
used AI.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of that. And I think it's doing us a bit of a disservice, to be honest, because I think that the penetration rate is much higher. That same group who said there was like 26% penetration adoption rate in companies also says there's something like a 70 to 86% penetration in personal use. And so those numbers don't seem to quite add up. Everybody or a
Right.
lot of people are using it at home and are doing a lot of shadow IT or using it and not reporting using it, is my belief.
I got you. I like it. All right. I appreciate your time. I just got one more question for you, which is if somebody's listening to you, Jason Michael Perry, and the author of the AI Evolution, what's the one thing they should be paying attention to right now in their daily work activities around AI?
Oh, I would say that the one thing that you should make sure that you're doing is you are using these tools and you are following, and I talk about this in my newsletter, following the evolution and the things that are possible, the way that these things are changing. This is going to change the way that you work. If you don't realize that now, it's a problem. And so you really like, even if you haven't used ChatGPT, if you haven't written a prompt, just get in and start using these tools and figuring out a way to use it for anything. And one of the easiest examples that I like to give, take your phone, take a picture of the in your pantry and just
Yes.
ChatGPT and say, what
Yes.
should I make for dinner? Like little thing that you can do at home just to
Love it.
start getting you a place and opportunity to use it. And then like when you see what's possible there and you start saying, well, man, where else can it help me? And that goes a long way. And then you start your brain opens up to the possibilities, and you start to realize that this isn't just a little tool for for having a chat conversation. That there's a lot more power there than you may realize.
All right. I love it. I think that I agree with you 100%. I say AI first and stay in the loop, right? Just make sure that
Hmm.
you're plugging in, you're getting good content out, and that you make sure that it matches with what the humans want. So it has some emotion and that it connects with the humans that you're working to communicate with.
100%.
All right. Well, I really appreciate it. If people want to get in touch with you, Jason, how do they find you in the world?
Easiest way to find me is my website, www.jasonmperry.com. That's jasonmperry.com. I always say I'm the man with three first names. So if you look for Jason Michael Perry, you'll find me that way too.
All right. Well, I really appreciate your time. I'm grateful for your insight today, and I hope that I can reach out and have you on the show again in a few months and see what's changed in the world.
I look forward to it. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day, Jason. Well, there you have it. I love that little bit, which is to take a picture of your fridge and your pantry and ask chat what you should make for dinner and how to do it. I hope you found value in the conversation I had with Jason today. Hope you reach out and get his book. Also hope that you take some time to find an AI tool or build a custom GPT that can save you some time out of your work week. And with that time, you continue to upskill, that you spend it with your friends and family, and that you get outside into nature, away from the screens, and become more fully human so that we can relive this renaissance that we're building into. It's Emmanuel Rose, Marketing in the Age of AI.
In an ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of. Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you.